So LSU opening spring practice today. I think one of the questions was, you know, a lot of the wide receivers tend to be winning a lot of the 7-on-7s. And yeah, Brian Kelly kind of joked, not really joked, but he was kind of like, you know, kind of explained it that the wide receivers are going to win a lot of those drills. So really fun to see LSU practicing. It's really exciting that, you know, football is just around the corner. The Hall of Fame game. We just had the Hall of Fame game. College football, it seems like everyone's opening up. Michigan, Alabama. I was listening to, you know, Harbaugh's been interviewed. Nick Saban's press conference today. So it's really cool that football is rolling. And touchdown, it's cool that Mason Smith is back out there. As far as the assistant goes, their assistant that's dealing with Coach Jimmy, their defensive line coach. Hopefully they get him back soon. So really cool to watch some of the practice footage of LSU. Mason Smith going through drills, Jordan Jefferson out there, Paris Shan. Watching some of the running backs, they have tremendous depth at the running back position. And at wide receiver, I think, you know, wide receiver could go from kind of, as of right now, you really have Malik Neighbors. I think it could go from Malik Neighbors to, hey, look at Aaron Anderson doing some nice things. Look at Kyle Parker or Sampson, one of the young freshmen doing some nice things. So I think that high-end talent, and there's depth of talent at the wide receiver position. There's a lot of guys that are just unproven that really need to take the next step as far as developing and making plays, being productive for this offense, and developing into kind of sure-handed guys for Jaden Daniels. Brian Thomas. So right now, you really can guarantee there's 3 sure-handed guys: Mason Taylor, Brian Thomas, and Malik Neighbors. It's interesting, Brian Thomas doesn't get a whole lot of buzz. I think I've touched on this. I know there's been some kind of debate in the comments of some of my videos. You know, Brian Thomas is a guy who is who he is, which is not a great thing, but it's also not a bad thing. Brian Thomas, he's a sure-handed, underneath guy. You know, Thomas, the upside is just not there with Brian Thomas, but I think that, to me, I get big into harping on, oh, this guy doesn't have too much upside. This guy's game doesn't translate as well to the NFL. This guy's all-around skill set. He doesn't really have a lot of very good elite traits overall in his game. I think I get too fixated on that. I think what's safe to say about Brian Thomas is he's a really good college wide receiver who's got good, sure hands. He's got experience. So Brian Thomas is certainly a guy that, any college program is happy to have a guy like him back. And Malik Neighbors, obviously anyone's happy to have him back, and a lot of, not just LSU fans, I think a lot of the NFL draft community, like he's moving up NFL draft consensus boards. I think a lot of the NFL draft community, and especially LSU fans, know the upside that Malik Neighbors has. Malik Neighbors is still a young guy, just going to be a true junior. You saw last year. To me, last year was kind of like, I've touched on this before with Neighbors. To me, last year was kind of like a glimpse of what Neighbors could be. I think it was just he was kind of just scratching the surface. I think this year, an improved offense, second-year quarterback, second-year coach, second-year OC. There's a guy that's, you know, the experience is under his belt, now a veteran. All things are working in favor of Malik Neighbors having a huge breakout season. Like I'm talking about, like maybe a 1,400-yard, double-digit touchdown type of season for Malik Neighbors. So keep an eye on Malik Neighbors. Denbrock's made an emphasis on making rack yards, run after the catch yards. So keep that in mind. That's something they want to really improve on. When you watch the Florida State game, watch if LSU makes an emphasis on that. Well, I guess you can't really make an emphasis. We'll just see if it's apparent in that Florida State game, and then even in the second game against Grambling. So in that game, we'll see if they've really made an emphasis, and we'll see if it's really showing in the first week of the season. Yeah, the Florida State game going to be a tough game. Jordan Travis, excellent quarterback for Florida State, who's got experience. That'll be tough. Jordan Travis versus the LSU defense is going to be a matchup to watch. It certainly was a matchup to watch last year in the game. We'll see how he can do this year with a healthy Mason Smith for the first game. If you remember, Mason Smith, I think he played a drive or two, but if you remember, Florida State was having a tougher time running the ball with Mason Smith in the game. And it wasn't just that game. If you rewind to 2021, teams really had a hard time running the ball with Mason Smith in the game. Mason Smith, this guy is this guy, you talk about a guy that can plug running lanes, that is Mason Smith. That is the name of his game. Plugging running lanes, making, you know, if you run at Mason Smith, there's a high chance he's going to make the tackle. So keep an eye on how he does. I think another reason why I think LSU is going to win is last year Florida State they only had a small dose of Harold Perkins. They did not see Omar Speights. So I think the two new linebackers are going to present a unique challenge for this team. Another guy, Duke Chestnut, too, is a nickelback transfer from Syracuse. I think the secondary is improved, too. So at LSU, healthy Mason Smith, new linebacking core. Maybe they rotate Greg Penn in. It was interesting that I forgot Greg Penn was starting that first game against Florida State. Now, Penn, a solid linebacker. I think he'll probably get rotated in. But, yeah, the secondary. Zy Alexander projected to start, transfer from Louisiana, one of the small FCS schools. So him, Chestnut, Toviano, maybe the freshman starts, Major Burns. Burns actually played a pretty good game last year. Brooks had a nice game in the Florida State game. But, yeah, it was a lot of guys that weren't starting last year, or it was small doses of Harold Perkins, no Omar Speights, no revamped secondary, or what at least we think on paper is an improved secondary. So I think that's going to present a unique challenge for Florida State. Not just Florida State, for all other teams. I think quietly LSU could have a very solid secondary. Like, I don't think this is a secondary that teams are going to fear, kind of like 2011 LSU. That was really a secondary that teams feared. I mean, if you look at that secondary, of course, Claiborne, a good college player. Tyrann Mathieu, a good college and NFL player. Who else did they have? Drawing a blank now, but Claiborne, Mathieu, I mean, exceptional players on the LSU secondary. LSU, they don't really have those guys on defense, but I think Javen Toviano is a unique guy because I don't think, like, I think he's a guy that he looks, I don't want to say raw, but it looks like there's still some more untapped potential in his game. When I watch his high school tape, I think he's still learning the defensive back position. Like, he reads plays fairly well, but I think he could read them I think he's got the ability to read them even faster. I think that once he gets a little more comfortable with college football, I think he'll read plays a lot faster. And it close on the ball quicker, make more pass breakups. I think you'll see some flashes of Toviano showing his ability if he does get the nod as a starter, but I think it's going to be really next year in his junior season that you'll really see the full potential of Javen Toviano. But he's a guy that's, draws a lot of questions from the media. One of their highest recruits coming in for the 2023 class. Really talented player, so we'll see how Toviano does. We'll see if he starts. We'll see how much he plays. But, yeah, Duke Chestnut, a guy, haven't watched a whole lot of Chestnut's tape, but a guy that really can play the nickelback position, a guy that can cover man-to-man, he can cover zone, a guy that can make tacklers. He's not an elite tackler, but he's certainly a good tackler. So keep an eye on the LSU secondary. Andre Sam, hard-hitting safety. We'll see how much he plays in the Florida State game and throughout the season. But, yeah, the secondary, Greg Brooks, Major Burns, Zy Alexander, Deuce Chestnut. So we'll see what happens there. Ovia Gofu, a talented edge rusher who can win with speed. He's really missing that. He can't not really challenge with speed to power. So a lot of his counters are, the counter that he's effective with is more of an inside counter. He can challenge. When he challenges with speed, he does have enough strength that he can go inside. He can't really do it effectively, so that's one thing I noticed scouting Ovia Gofu. But, yeah, Gofu I think will be a nice player for him. And he goes back to the point that I've touched on with Brian Kelly. He's a guy that they're going to ask him to win. They're going to ask him to win a lot of one-on-one matchups this year. And can he do that is the question. And if he can, I think he's going to play more and more snaps as the season goes on. If he can't, then maybe you see Brandon Dorlus a little bit more. I haven't watched Dorlus's tape, but when I did watch him. He did stand out at Oregon last year in the first game against Ohio State, so I think Brandon Dorlus is certainly a guy to keep an eye on. I think he's a talented player. I think he does some good things. I think he's good against the run. I think he plays fast. He's competitive. He's tough. So yeah, he'll definitely be a guy to keep an eye on. Yeah, the LSU offensive line. LSU offensive line getting a lot of buzz as we head into camp. We'll see if any of the guys that are projected to start, we'll see if any of them don't get the nod. But yeah, I mean, it seems to be DeLinger at guard, Turner at center, Frazier at the other guard, and then the 2 tackles, Campbell and Emory Jones. The bookend tackles appears to be the starting lineup. We'll see. DeLinger, maybe a question. Charles Turner, maybe a question at center. But yeah, DeLinger and Turner, even though their jobs are a little bit in question, they are talented players nonetheless. So I'm going to wrap with that, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Bayou Bengals Football. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes of clips from the show.